got triggered today by finding yet another article bringing up the fact that Warner Brothers is searching for a way to make Superman relevant to modern audiences, as if he isn't already relevant to modern audiences. So I thought, well, let's take a look at the positive end on that. Here's why Superman is relevant to me. In the comments, how is Superman relevant to you? Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my rant. I don't know. I got triggered again going through Facebook and finding yet another article reminding me of the fact that Warner Brothers has said they're searching for a way to make Superman relevant to modern audiences. And I disagree with that whole premise. Superman is currently, today, relevant to modern audiences, and I don't know where the disconnect is. So I thought, why not sit here in front of the camera and do a video and tell you why Superman is relevant to me. Superman is my favorite superhero, period, hands down. And I'm gonna tell you why and what makes that character so unbelievably relevant to me. But then, I gotta hear from you in the comments, what makes Superman relevant to you? So here's what makes Superman relevant to me. I once got this great opportunity to deliver this message, and I called it, What If Clark Kent Forgot He Was Superman? And the whole thing was based off one of my favorite authors. He wrote something along the same lines. My favorite author, Ted Dekker. So it was kind of cool to go through and read what he wrote, and then I kind of took that and applied it because Superman is just as my favorite superhero. But what if Clark Kent forgot he was Superman? Well, if he forgot he was Superman, he wouldn't fly. He wouldn't be acting in his powers and all the strength and all the power that is actually available to him. He wouldn't be walking in it or acting on it, because all he would see is the exterior, the mild-mannered reporter, the mild-mannered man. That's all he would see, and not the super suit and the real power that exists underneath. And for me, that's what I love about Superman. I love seeing relatable, mild-mannered Clark Kent that largely is kind of just ignored by people, and, you know, I don't know, like, he's just Clark Kent. But underneath that just Clark Kent, there is Superman. There is all these resources, these abilities, and these powers available to him to make a difference in the world. Now, as a Christian in a relationship with Jesus, the thing that really stands out to me about that is the picture that Superman represents to me. Because I believe this: the Holy Spirit is still here in the world, and not just here in the world, but when we invite him in, he lives inside of our hearts. When you go and you look at the book of Acts and you look at the disciples and you look at these crazy things that they didn't do it because they had superpowers. They did it because they had the Holy Spirit living in them, and the Holy Spirit was doing it through them. And in my opinion and in my belief, that hasn't changed. The Holy Spirit is still here, and he still lives in us. So there's an abundant resource and abundant power that is available to us. When I look at Superman, his power comes from where? The sun. It comes from the light. He is a solar battery. And where he gets his great giftings and he gets his great power is by spending time in the sun and absorbing its power into himself. Then he's able to step into the world and perform these great signs and wonders. But one more thing, he doesn't do this for glory to himself. He is laying his life down to serve others. And for him, all the stuff that he does, they're acts of humility and they are acts of service. That should be what the Christian life is. We surrender ourselves to Jesus and spend time in the sun, S-O-N. We let the Holy Spirit into our hearts, and the power that he gives us, we step into that and walk it out in our lives. And we do it not out of pride, we do it out of humility and service to what God has called us to do. And that's the picture that I see in Superman. And when I see that character, that's just what he represents to me. And I look at it and I go, wow, if we could all just get past our Clark Kent mild-mannered exterior and realize there is so much more underneath and so much more available to us through Jesus, man, what could we really walk in if we truly believed that and stepped out in his power? So when I look at Superman, that's what I see. And specifically, I see that in Man of Steel. Because this Clark is a Clark Kent that doesn't yet know he's a Superman. Even though he knows he has these powers, He doesn't know what to do with them, and he's searching for his place in this world, which I find incredibly relevant. I find incredibly relatable. So before he becomes that beacon of hope, he's searching for what is his call and his destiny. And then just how Moses was put in that basket and sent across the river, adopted by another family, Clark was placed in a ship, sent across the stars, adopted by another family. Just as Moses suddenly had the burning bush and God spoke to him out of the burning bush and gave him a call and a destiny, all of a sudden Jor-El calls Superman. And when he finds Jor-El gives him a vision, the vision that he's to be a bridge between two people, that it's not about hiding, it's about the fact that he's to use these gifts, but to use them to be hope for mankind, to show them a better way than what Krypton did. Which is also interesting because Clark faces the worst parts of both cultures. The worst sin of Krypton is their pride. God says, I knit you together in your mother's womb. And Krypton decided, hold my beer, God, I can do so much better. And they decided what they were going to do was knit Kryptonians together themselves, kind of ripping the Matrix off a little bit there, but growing crops of Kryptonians and trying to genetically alter the bloodlines so that they have specific destinies and specific skill sets or whatever.
What if a child dreamed of becoming something other than what society had intended for him or her? What if a child aspired to something greater?
And think about the failure this set Zod up for when Superman had to face this pride, this sin in Zod, because Zod believed he had no other choice. He was programmed to protect Krypton.
And every action I take, no matter how violent or how cruel, is for the greater good of my people.
Yeah, okay, whatever you say, Zod. Really what he wanted was to continue that pride and sit in that place of authority to decide, in his opinion, which bloodline is worthy to live on and which is not and should never exist again. That included humanity, who he deemed unworthy to live on and to have life. And then Superman defeats him, and what does he do? He forces Superman into a position to kill him because he wanted to die. He didn't want to go on living. He thought his purpose was taken from him, but that wasn't true. His purpose wasn't taken from him. He was free to find a new purpose, but he didn't know he was free because of Krypton and its pride. They just messed that whole thing up. Then Clark faces the fear of mankind and the fear in his own heart. But if you look at our modern times, this is a Superman movie that came out in 2013, and I think he's a true product of our time. And if we don't like it and find that too dark and broody, well, then let's just examine our time. Let's examine how we treat people on the internet. Let's examine how we treat people when somebody says, I like The Last Jedi. Let's just examine that for a second and then take a look at the product we got in Superman. Because here he is, born into an incredibly dark world, a very divisive time, that world that would be utterly terrified of him and divided on him at best. So here's his mom and dad, and they love him, they're teaching him good lessons, and even Jonathan Kent says things like this.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
So yes, even though Jonathan Kent has weak moments like this, he's still teaching his son the right thing, to make the right choices, to be able to stand proud in front of the human race and not stand in front of the human race as like an evil dictator.
All these changes that you're going through, one day you're going to think of them as a blessing, and when that day comes, you're going to have to make a choice. A choice of whether to stand proud in front of the human race or not.
So he's trying to teach his son humility, and he's trying to teach his son the right thing, all the while dealing with fear in himself. So we see with Man of Steel, fear gets a hold of us and it holds us back. And we see a Clark Kent learning what's underneath the mild-mannered exterior. A Clark Kent discovering his calling so that he could step out into that calling and step out into that power. When I watch Man of Steel, even the brooding stuff about Superman, all of it, I find relatable because I'm still living this life. I'm still walking and searching. I'm still trying to draw closer to God every day and hear his whispers to me of what he's called me to do and to step out and the abilities that he's given me. And when I look at the Man of Steel Superman, I see somebody going through that. And I find it inspiring because at the very end, we see his choice. He chooses to stand proud in front of the human race and not ashamed. He chooses good, not evil. He chooses humility and not hey, look at all my powers, let me rule the earth. No, he chooses to serve. We see that happen by the end of Man of Steel. Now, I don't know what the future of the DCEU is going to be. I don't know how much of things in the future are going to be soft reboots, hard reboots, or whatever. I know we're keeping Gal Gadot and we're keeping Jason Momoa, so I'm thinking things are going in a soft reboot. So let's continue with Henry Cavill and develop that Superman. I think Man of Steel gives us a relevant story of Superman finding his calling and finding his place in our world. Sure, he broods and sure, he battles with fear and he's a little bit darker than what we're used to, but that's a product of our time. What we're watching is him finding that place and learning to overcome and stepping out into the light, stepping out into the power that is available to him to serve. And I think it's a powerful, relevant story. So there it is. As a Christian, when I look at Superman, that's the picture that I see, and that's what makes that character relevant to me. How about you? What makes Superman relevant to you? Let's pretend for a moment those WB execs are watching, and let's be nice because we want them to hear. And let's talk in the comments about what makes Superman relevant to me. So leave that in the comments, and while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified the next time I do a movie review, theological analysis, ranking video, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.